Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the channel. Now, with me today, I have Shawn. Is it Baichoo or Baiku?
Baichoo.
Baichoo, Shawn Baichoo with me
Baichoo, yeah.
today to talk about his career and, of course, Watch Dogs Legion, the Bloodline TSC, and his past with Ubisoft, because there's quite a few Ubisoft games that I didn't actually know he was in, and they're quite interesting to talk about. We also got to talk about his career beforehand, how he got into acting, and just around goodiness. And we're going to answer your questions as well. So, Shawn, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Billy. Thanks for having me on your channel.
No worries. This is pretty exciting. We'd had to start off. How did you get into this mad world of acting? Because there's a bunch of different avenues to travel down, and your most prominent one is, of course, voice acting. So how did you just start off with the whole, who's your inspiration?
So yeah, I mostly do voice and mocap now. Like the majority of my work is voice for video games, mocap. But I also do other voice stuff like original animation. I just did my first audiobook, actually.
That's cool.
Yeah, I also do a lot of dubbing. So like Netflix shows and all that will come in from Spain or France or whatever. And there's a few directors in town who hire local actors to play certain characters. I do a fair amount of that as well. So my career as a voice actor and motion capture actor, it's more like a subset of my larger career, which is just as an actor. I, studied biochemistry when I graduated from high school. When I went to college, because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was good in biology and chemistry, so I was a bit of a science nerd. I still am, actually, to this day, but it's just not my career focus. And I wasn't happy, so I switched to the theater program at a local college here called Dawson College theater program. Did that for 3 years, graduated. Took workshops, furthered my education, did Fight Directors Canada, which is a stage combat stunt fighting seminar. So I got my certification with those people. Did a lot of independent theater, a lot of independent film, student projects, working the side job as a waiter, the whole deal. Did that for about 10 years. And then after about 10 years, things really started to unlock for me. I started getting, bigger parts in different kinds of productions. But it was roughly around that time that I really started to drift into motion capture. They tried me out for some project, I forget what it was, and shortly after that, I got cast as Machiavelli in Assassin's Creed 2, and that led to Brotherhood, then to Revelations, and I got cast as Stéphane Chaffaut in Assassin's Creed 3, and then I had a much smaller part in AC4, and I had one line, but I did a lot of crowd work, crowd life.
Like background characters, that type of thing.
Yeah, background characters, guards, a whole bunch of just living world stuff, a bit of stunt work as well. Good chance that if you shoot someone in the neck and they fall off their horse, there's a good chance that's me you're killing, depending on the game. So I just kind of did all that, and then, different opportunities came up. I'm not one to say no to new opportunities. So as you kind of grow, and what's nice about Montreal, which is where I live, is it's a pretty small community. It's not as big as Toronto or Vancouver or New York or something, which is huge. So there's a lot, everyone knows each other. It's exceedingly rare that I'll work on a project and not know the director or one of the other actors. So it's very small. So when you do good work, if you're talented and you're a good actor, it's good because you get connected. People suggest you. They come get you. Oh, I worked with him. I'm doing a project. Who can you suggest? Oh, Shawn would be great for this. He's really good at X, Y, Z. So that's great. The flip side of that is if you're not a nice person or not a very good actor, that word gets around too. But it's good. It's a really tight community. Tremendous people in the community. A lot of people kind of backing each other up and supporting each other. So I just realized I have the wrong name on my profile here. I'm just going to change that to my name. There we go. It just kind of progressed that way, and
sort of like So I was about to say sort of like a word of mouth type thing, the community, like
In part, I mean, I don't want to lean too much into the nepotism aspect, because I don't think there is a lot of that going on here. It really is about the quality of work that people can put out. And, you know, the reason why it took me maybe 10 years for things to really start taking off for me is that's the amount of time it took for people to get to know who I was as an actor, what I could deliver, how, you know, what my range was or what I was capable of. And it shows in how, you know, initially I did a lot more auditions and would get, you know, a certain percentage of work. Now I still audition, but less, but I work more. So it's often, you know, Ubisoft will be like, hey, we're doing a new project and the client chose you. So can you come in next week and do a day and a half because we're trying out this thing or we're recording that thing. So yeah, just kind of, you know, I believe that when you're an artist who especially in acting, because acting has a lot of facets to it, you know, it's not just voice or just film. There are certainly people who specialize in certain areas. I never had a specialty. I just kind of went where the work was, whatever I was good at. But over time, you know, over those 10 years, I got to see that what I was best at were motion capture, voice, and to a lesser extent, stunt work and fight choreography. Not that I'm less good at those things. It's just there's much less opportunity for me to do those things as opposed to voice or mocap. So, you know, sometimes people, they're like, oh, how'd you become a voice actor? Or how are you a video game actor? And I have to kind of clarify that it's not one. It's not just that's not just what I do. Like I could go on set tomorrow. I mean, I don't have anything booked for tomorrow, but I could, you know, walk onto a set tomorrow, shoot a commercial or a film, TV show. You know, I do a bunch of things. But I believe when you're an artist, you know, if you do many things, you tend to, if you say yes to the opportunities that come your way, you tend to drift into what you're best at. And I find the work I get kind of reflects that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's something that personally I can relate to. So I spent 3 years in the UK. So we finish school and then we go to college and then we go to university. So I started off wanting to do game design. That's always how I got, obviously, you know, gamer nerd, gaming channel. That's how I got into it. But then the acting side caught me more. So then I spent 3 years doing theatre and musical theatre. Realised I didn't really want to do musical theatre. Didn't like dancing. So then, it's whatever. Yeah, I was like, no, should I dance? Nah, bro. So then I got into just normal acting, stage and screen, and then TV, and then obviously I started getting more into story games. And in story games, obviously voice acting and the mocap is some of the most important aspects of the entire thing.
Absolutely.
How are you going to draw out the character's emotion and make someone feel connected to them if you can't properly do that? And in some ways, it is a lot more difficult, especially when it's just the voice acting, because you can do all the movements, you can do all the facial capture, but if the voice doesn't match it, if the voice then doesn't match the emotion, it will take you out of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's kind of where I got my love for acting from, the story and the characters, essentially.
Sure, and I see a lot of people, you know, fans I talk to on Twitter and stuff like that. A lot of people want to do that too. You know, they want to they want to voice act because I think they're connected to that in the media they consume. And I find it interesting, you know, because I think it's really a question of perspective, because you say, you know, it's harder to just do the voice without the rest of you to back it up. But I'm not sure I agree with that. I think it's more of a personal thing for me. But when I'm voice acting, because I can solely focus on my voice, I find I'm not concerned with other things. Like, you know, film acting, I got to hit my mark. I got to, you know, make sure, or on stage, I got to make sure I hit my light, that I'm lit. I got to project to the audience. I got to, you know, like there's a lot more to focus on. I find with voice, it's just technique. Now, there is a lot that's outside of your control, out of your hands. How are they going to animate it? What's the context of the game or the story? You can only, you know, do your best. But I find like that's what I love so much about voice acting is I don't mind physically. I love motion capture because it's movement. But with voice acting, like I find as an actor, if I can just project myself into that situation in the booth, the voice will just give a really genuine rendition of what I'm feeling, and to the point where I'm always like flailing my arms and miming stuff when I'm in a booth. I don't just stand in front of the mic and go blah 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 blah.
Here's my lines.
Exactly. Like, even if it's something really mundane, like, okay, you're a guard, you're patrolling, and you hear a noise, I'll stand there like holding a rifle, walking, obviously not holding a real rifle. There is no rifle in the booth, I'm just miming one. I'm not actually walking, but in my mind, I have that movement. I'm just to be there. You know what I mean? And then, so even if it's something as simple as, huh? In so many games, when your stealth maybe isn't perfect. Even for things like that, I find it, to me, it is like I'm acting on film or on television. It's just we're only capturing, the voice aspect. I
guess in some way it helps.
Teach their own,
to be in the moment as well. Then with the actions, like it helps.
Sure. And it's a very different experience being in a booth doing barks and onos for a guard versus, being in a full performance capture gear with other actors doing wrench in a scene, for example, because then there's different things at stake in terms of what we have to do as an actor. But I wouldn't qualify one as being more desirable than the other. They're just kind of different,
I know, I completely understand. It's let's just go and transition now onto more of your career and your games and how it's kind of progressed. So looking at your stuff, you started out in 2005 with Ubisoft and a game called Far Cry Instincts. You played additional voices in the Evolution DLC. Now, going on from that, you also, as mentioned before, just voicing the guard, you also voiced a Damascus and Acre Informer in Assassin's Creed 1.
Yes, that's the guy who sends you on those really annoying missions to get his flags that he somehow lost all over.
Do you know what's bad? I'm supposed to be part of an Assassin's Creed channel as well. I haven't even completed AC1.
I don't think I did either. I think I finished the story, but I certainly didn't
do all the side quests.
Yeah, exactly. I always thought that people, vaguely associated my voice with a feeling of annoyance in my early stages of my career, because it's like, why do I hate this guy? And I'm like, oh, the flags. Yeah, but that was one of my first voice gigs. Yeah, it was Far Cry Instincts. I think I was like some East Asian type guard. I forget what part of the world it took place in, but I did some of that. Yeah, that's fine.
And then also obviously you said Nicola Machiavelli, and then another character talking about annoyance. You played Duccio.
Yes, my boy Duccio.
Your boy, the character everyone definitely went to find to beat up in Revelations. Definitely.
In all three games, actually. He's a triple threat. You first smack him in 2, then in Brotherhood, and then in Revelations. Actually, I don't know if you beat him in Revelations. I think in Revelations
Yeah, you can. You obviously meet him while talking to someone, and then in the open world, you can just go and find him.
Oh, that was sick.
The amount of times I've done that.
In Brotherhood, he wanted revenge, so he kind of ambushes you. In the first one, you punch him in the face for cheating on your sister. And number 2, he wants revenge. He ambushes you, and I think in 3, you just kind of come across him, and he's like, ah! And he runs off. Oh. Yeah, he was a super fun character to play.
Was it because obviously different characters, different acting? Is it fun to play like the douche? Is it fun to play a character that's not your own personality, so to speak?
Absolutely, it's one of the things I love most about acting. Actually, I have nothing against being me. I think I'm a fairly.
I think you're pretty awesome.
Interesting. Thank you. I'm not fishing for compliments here, but I think I'm a fairly interesting person. Sure, but what I love with acting is I love exploring being other people, living other states of being human. I find what I love most about acting. Well, one of the things I love most, because actually the connection it brings me with people. Is another aspect I like that I never anticipated. But one of the things I like the most is, I find whoever you are in life, like, if I take my life, my my family, my married life, my home, my career, my friends, my hobbies, all the things that make me, me. My experience of being human, the human experience is a pretty narrow slice of the pie, if you think about it. I live in North America. I'm, fairly privileged. I'm white passing. So, I don't experience a lot of racism or discrimination. I'm heterosexual. So, like all the things that define who I am, it's a pretty narrow margin of experience of life. And being an actor, you get to put your feet into other slices of that pie, if you will, without having to deal with the real world consequences of doing those things, right? So, I don't want to murder anyone. I've never fantasized about murdering anyone, but I would love to play like a murderer or, someone who has a different experience with life and a different relationship to people, or a different relationship to empathy or to, lack of empathy. So being able to do all those things I find is super fun because it doesn't cost me anything in real life and it doesn't reflect any of my real vulnerabilities. So if I play a douchebag like Duccio, very aptly named, I have to say, I don't find it embarrassing or weird to be this sniveling, kind of cowardly worm of a man. I'm all into it. Like, I love exploring what does that mean? How do I come across with people? Where can I go with it? And one of the basic rules of acting is, if you play a bad guy, no bad guy ever thinks of himself as a bad guy, right? Every villain is just at odds with someone else. Every villain is the protagonist of their own story, right? So, Duccio doesn't see himself as a
bad guy,
as a bad guy or as a coward. He sees himself as being justified, and the world's against him, and whatever delusions he has. So exploring that, getting into that, living that, albeit briefly, is great because then I don't have to take that home with me. I don't have to live the real world consequences of getting punched in the face by a bunch of people. You know what I mean?
100%. For me, it's like finding out why is such a fun part of it. Like, why is this character like this? Why in this scenario? Or for instance, Duccio, why would he decide to cheat on, their sister and whatever? Why would he continue to act like that throughout the games as well? That's kind of interesting to think about, especially when it's your character.
And it's, you also have a director who kind of steers where the scene's going, and he has the overall vision of things. But that's the fun of it, is there's no right answer, right? Like I coach actors on occasion and stuff like that. And, something I often tell people is there's no right or wrong choices for a part. There's only stronger choices and weaker choices, right? So no choice is wrong. If you're honest about it, no one can fault you for being honest. It's just, what's the best choice? What's the best way to communicate an idea in the context of everything else? That's where the director comes in. He might see the larger picture that you might not get as an actor.
Oh yeah. One thing that I'd say, if anyone out there wants to act in it, don't know. Just one thing I've learned is always don't be scared to fail. Like, if you're given a character and you want to try something, just do it. Some people might laugh at you, but who cares? Like, because you'll know what not to do. And that's always a great thing. Plus,
no, you're right. I agree with you completely. What you're speaking about, what you're talking to, is one of the most fundamental things, I think, that destroys people's desire to continue acting, is the inability to take failure as a tool for growth, right? Like, if you tie your validity as an artist only to the successes you have, you're not going to think of yourself as much of an artist, right? Because if you're too successful off the top and you don't fail, that's also not good, because you're going to lose perspective. And, obviously, if you fail continuously and never, ever, succeed in anything, that can be demoralizing. It might also be a sign that you're not meant to do that thing, or not talented enough, or you need more training, you need more mentoring, whatever. You need more maybe you need to switch your approach, collaborate with someone, or work for someone, or outsource something you normally do to someone else. If you're in a project of any kind. So, it's kind of, there's all these factors, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent on every question.
That's right. It's clear understanding. It's like the way I started looking at it. It's like when you're learning, when you're in school, for instance, in England, obviously you really go to English class or science or maths. If you fail a maths question, you don't just give up and stop doing maths. You just keep, working at it until you figure out the right answer.
Sure.
And that's similar to finding a character in my personal experience. That's the way I've looked at it.
Sure. And when you, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
I was going to say, then obviously if you've got the director and the writer, they will have some input, similar to how a teacher would have some input into helping you figure out how to work out this question. And then further on, as you keep getting better and better and better, you'll then start to be able to figure it out yourself. And it will then slowly become easier because you've learned. You haven't just given up at the first hurdle.
Exactly. I mean, if you give up, you're not going to, continue past your failure to learn how to be better at whatever it is you're doing, whether it's math or acting yes. or whatever, And I have a friend of mine who was studying some subject, and she was upset, and I'm like, "What's wrong?" And she says, "Well, my teacher's really hard on me, and I put all this work into a project, and I submitted it, and he didn't like it. I had to start everything over again." I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "Did you do it over?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "You presented it to your teacher?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "What did he say?" He says, "He said it was much better." I said, "So was your project better the second time?" He says, "Yeah." So I said, "So what the hell are you complaining about? Isn't that the point of school?"
Yeah.
You get challenged, you see where you need work, you work on that, and then you're just better overall. When I was in theater school, it was a good program, but it had its flaws like everything else, and a bit of an old school mentality when it came to some of the teaching, and a lot of the teachers, the male teachers, kind of had their favorites in our class. All the guys that they thought were going to be the stars, the big Hollywood go-getters.
Relatable.
Yeah, I'm sure you've experienced that too. And they just kind of like, yeah, whatever, just keep doing your thing, I guess, whatever. They didn't really pay much attention to me, which is ironic because out of my entire graduating class, I think I'm the only person now who really keeps acting professionally.
Yeah,
Everyone else kind of drifted off, which is understandable. It's a tough business. What was the point I was trying to make here? Anyway, so the teachers had their favorites, their students, but because of that, when I do a show, I wouldn't get much direction. They wouldn't really work with me. They'd be like, "You're fine, just keep doing your thing." So when I graduated, my impression was like, okay, I'm a really good actor because I never need direction. Mm-hmm. And then when I did my first solo theater show, this one-man show I did, the director was very hands-on and she really worked with me. And after my first few, rehearsals, every time I'd leave feeling terrible. I'm like, I thought I was better, and I feel like I suck as an actor because she keeps questioning my choices and pushing me, and only after that did I realize, no, that's what I need to do my best possible work. I need to be challenged. I need to have a director to kind of push me in new directions. If you take that scene in Watch Dogs 2 where Wrench gets his mask back from Marcus, when we first did that scene, I made certain choices for Wrench, and then the director came in and we worked and worked and worked and worked that scene. And the scene is great. It's a great scene.
Yeah.
But I guarantee without all that work, had we just done the first take, my first approach to the material might not have been bad. But when I was talking about choices earlier, it was a weaker choice compared to the stronger choices the director pushed us towards by working on it. So that's why you can't also have much of an ego as an actor, because if you think you know better or that your choice is always the best ones no matter what, it's a collaborative process. What I do, it's not me I'm not Wrench, all right? I'm the voice of Wrench. I'm the body language and movement of Wrench, but I didn't design the character. I didn't cast the part. I got cast in the part. I didn't write his dialogue. I didn't do any of his promotion. I didn't choose his powers in the game, his abilities. I didn't animate him. I didn't choose what his story was. All I did was, invest what I could as an actor into him and do the best job I could. And, I had an impact on the script. I changed a lot of lines. I got to improvise some stuff. Once people saw that I was really aligned with the character, they gave me some freedom to do some stuff, and I think it improved the game. But, my point is it's a collaborative effort. So it's not very... It doesn't help anyone when actors get too high and mighty on I'm this character. I'm like, you're the face of it. I don't see a lot of people going, hey, great job to Shawn and the writers and the animators and the sound engineers and the director and the producers. It's always like, hey, Shawn, you're great as Wrench. We love you. Thank you for bringing us Wrench. And while I appreciate that, on occasion, I try to remind people yes, and the writers did a good job, or Ubisoft was smart to bring him back, or give the fans what they want, or whatever. So it's a group effort, I always want to keep that in mind when I can.
That was brilliant. But then let's go more into Watch Dogs. Now, some people may not know, but you were actually in the first Watch Dogs game. That was your first outing in the Watch Dogs universe. I believe you played the ND Fixer actor, and you also did the motion capture. I believe that's what your IMDb says. Maybe wrong, because obviously IMDb's.
No, I think it's pretty accurate. But I basically, I played. I think his name was Raul Leonzo. One of my Twitter fans actually gave me the name of the character. I love how my fans know more than I do about this stuff. It's great. But Raul, I think they're incredible. The community is just incredible. But Raul, the ND Fixer guy, I think that's how he's listed in the game. He's got this face tattoo. Yeah, he's in the first few minutes of the game when Aiden goes into the baseball stadium, and he meets Jordy as he finds all these dead bodies lying around. He's like, oh shit, okay, blah blah blah, and then he hears yo, I call somebody's name, and I turn the corner, all gangsta.
Cool.
I see him, I'm like, oh shit, and I pull my gun out. And then Jordy stabs me in the back and then stages the shootout. And then later in the game, Aiden threatens that same character in prison. There's a mission where he's in prison and he goes up to my character and he threatens to put him in jail to extend his sentence to 60 years or something if he doesn't tell him something, or if he blabs on him. I forget. But apart from that, I also played some gangsters, some cops, a pimp. Sometimes in the baseball stadium when you're first walking around, there's a pimp or something facing off with some cops. I was in that scene. Then I played a bunch of civilians, people on the street, stuff like that. A bunch of
additional voices.
Yeah, so I was mostly in the background for the first game.
And then
when they did the Bad Blood DLC, I also did some mocap for Default very briefly for one of the scenes when he fights.
Oh, that's cool.
T-Bone, when they have some kind of something to do with poison gas, I forget. That was me. And there's a scene where T-Bone goes to find some guy who got stabbed and betrayed, and he's in a house and his face is all bandaged up and he's in a bed and he's on a life support machine. That was me as well. That was another speaking part I had. I seem to play a lot of characters whose face is modified up.
Yeah, I think you might need
ask for tattoos or bandages.
I think you might need to message Ubisoft and ask them, what the problem with that is.
Maybe they're trying to establish it's the same character, right?
Ooh.
The guy with the tattoos got him removed by laser, which gave him the bandages, and now he covers that up with his wrench mask. No, that's not canon.
Yeah,
I'm totally kidding.
That's not Reginald Belchman.
It's not Reginald Belchman, no. So I was involved with Bloodline as well, and it's actually because of my work on Watch Dogs and Bloodline that when we did the demo for Watch Dogs 2, some of the team called me back in for Wrench.
So I guess most of you are wondering, what the fuck, where is Billy's face? Where is this magnificent man we love to see? And, well, my camera died during the interview. I just, you get to see Shawn's face. That's amazing. That's sick. So enjoy Shawn's face.
for the demo, and then that led to.
So talk about how did that. So getting more into the voice acting, how did you get into Watch Dogs 2? Did you have to go through an audition progress, or because of your previous experiences with the company, were they like, his voices would like you just to try it out? How did you properly get involved with and get the role of Wrench?
So in video games, pre-production, there's usually something called a vertical slice. For those who don't know what that means, it's basically if you can imagine a video game as like a cake. If you take one slice of that cake, you go through all the layers. You get to see what all the layers are. So a vertical slice is usually like a mission, some of the main characters, some of the game mechanics, maybe a cinematic, just enough so that the higher ups can go, we like this game, here's more money, or change this, or recast that person, or whatever. So the guy who directed the Bad Blood DLC was in charge of the vertical slice, and so when he saw Wrench, the character concept, his first thought was that he was kind of a cliched looking character, like this big, tough, spiky looking dude. Yeah. And he wanted to kind of go against type. Instead of casting someone to play him like a big tough guy, I'm Wrench, kind of boring. Instead, he said, "Hey, Shawn was great. He's a funny guy. He's always improvising, and he's got great energy. So I want to take Shawn." And I've never watched the show, but apparently his inspiration for my character for Wrench was a character on Mr. Robot. The show with
was it the main character? The main character is played by, he is a hacker who,
I forget his name, the main guy, Rami Malek, I think.
Rami Malek, he plays it. He's
not him. I think there was another character who was like this super motor mouth, like super high energy guy. I think I looked him up. So the director was like, him. I want you to take that kind of energy, that kind of motor mouth, nonstop, high energy, almost kind of annoying personality, with your sense of humor and your pop culture sensibilities. And I wanted you to mesh that with the image of Wrench to create this kind of unique persona. And I thought it was a huge risk and a brilliant idea. I love risks in acting and art. Risks is how you find greatness. It's how you fail too. But you'll never know if you don't risk it, right?
100%.
So it was super against type, really off the beaten path, not what you'd expect. To the point where when a concept art of Wrench was first released, a lot of people were like, "I hate how he looks. Like I can hear in my head what he's going to sound like, this guy, and I hate it already." And I don't blame people. If that had been the direction we'd taken, it would have been indeed a less inspired choice. But
I think it was also because of obviously how different Watch Dogs 1 and Watch Dogs 2 are in terms of
tone. Oh yeah, for sure.
So then
one was so gritty, and
the next one's kind of a bit comedy. But then once everyone saw the first gameplay, the first cinematic trailer, people realized, oh, actually this can be something more than a gritty, like real life-esque type game.
Yeah, and that too is a risk, I think, but I think it was a good one. I absolutely love the atmosphere of Watch Dogs 2. I loved being in that world. So essentially, he cast me as Wrench. We did like a day or two of shooting where we did a couple scenes. I was cast as Wrench. Another actor was cast as Marcus. I think it was just him and I. And we shot that. In our first scene, the director comes up to me and he's like, "All right, I want you to like 100%, just turn it all the way up, go crazy." And I'm like,
should I?
I shouldn't give you 100%. Then it might be a bit much for this character. He's like, no, give me everything you got. And I was like, okay, careful what you wish for. So we did a take, and then after the take, the yell cut. The director walks up to me. He's like, "Yeah, okay, let's maybe take it down by 10-15%. I told you. So Wrench is actually where Wrench is now was a very finessed version of what he was initially. He was, looking back, I think he was maybe a bit too much, but we found him. We found the character, and now he's like effortless, I find. So that was it. And then I did the vertical slice.
Yep.
I was told, look, it's probably not going to be you in the game. They're probably going to recast the parts with, I don't know, names or celebrities or whatever their standards are for these things. But I also thought I left enough of my unique impression on the character that it'd probably be hard to replace him.
Yeah.
And I was right. I got a call sometime later saying they're going to keep me as Wrench. They did recast Marcus, but they kept me on as Wrench. And then I kind of met the team and we shot the thing, and the rest is kind of history. So yeah, so there was no audition process. It was just, like I was saying earlier, based on
your previous
work and people knowing me and knowing I'm reliable. It was just a really good fit, And
that's worked. So obviously Watch Dogs 2 set out a completely different tone than the first game. As we talked previously, fans didn't necessarily warm up to it until we learned the characters. I mean, some of my most popular videos back when Watch Dogs 2 was coming out was my character biographies on Marcus, Wrench, Satara, Josh, and then people warmed up. I mean, the most viewed one is Wrench. And of course, the game released, it essentially, people didn't, it sounds really bad, but people didn't really care about Marcus or the other characters. They cared about Wrench because of not only his uniqueness, but he was funny. And then he did have a serious tone as well. So he offered pretty much everything that fans essentially wanted from a character. How was that feeling when the game released and fans finally got to see more of the character and actually began to realize, oh, he's not just this comedic relief? How did that make you feel?
I mean, I think it was a bit of a gradual process. Like, it's not like the game came out and Wrench was a smash hit and the game was like, whatever. Like, the game came out, there was a lot of comparisons to Watch Dogs 1. Yeah. I think sales were actually hurt a bit because people were a bit burned by some of their problems with the first game. But, I remember, I think prior to the game coming out, I had I think 600 to 800 Twitter followers, right? Because I'd done Outlast and Assassin's Creed and Deus Ex and stuff like that. So I had some people, following me. And then Ubisoft, they had some kind of official account. They just tweeted out, world, Wrench, the world. And then they tagged, that I was the guy who played Wrench. And I think I got like 1,000 followers in a day or something. It was crazy. I'm like, what's happening? But prior to this, the person in charge of the PR for Watch Dogs, and I think partially for the casting, they got in touch. They're like, look, the game's coming out soon. We're going to announce, who's playing who and whatnot. This is going to be big. So you got to be real careful not to give anything away. You got to be careful what kind of interviews you do. They were really careful to make sure that nothing was spoiled, which I completely get. And I'm pretty good at that now. But that too kind of created some. Yes, I got so many. I want to get one tattooed on my back so I can just take a photo of that every time I do a project. I go, tick, 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 there you go, signed.
Small.
Yeah. So. So I was a bit prepared for what was coming, I guess, because they kind of warned me. So it was lovely. I mean, people were getting in touch saying they loved the work, and that just pretty much never stopped. Seriously, for the last 4 years, it's been every week someone writes to me and they're like, hey, I loved your work as Wrench. He's great. I think he's wonderful. In terms of how he was received, versus Marcus, I think the strength of Watch Dogs 2 is really the ensemble, and I'm not saying that to diffuse. Wrench's worth.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But I get why Wrench is a lot of people's favorite character, but it really is because of the group dynamic, and I really don't think the game would have worked had they switched that dynamic. Had Wrench been the lead character and Marcus been just part of DedSec, I don't think that would have worked. I've softened my opinion a bit on whether Wrench should be like a lead character in a story, since I've been playing Legion with pretty much exclusively Wrench, and I'm like, actually, he holds his own pretty well. I gotta say, I thought he might get annoying after a while, but he doesn't, because I find him really funny and fun to play. So, I kind of, I don't know if I expected that, but I understand why. Because if you take DedSec as a whole, we really appeal to a whole bunch of different people. So, Josh appeals to a lot of people on the spectrum, for example. Marcus obviously appeals to a lot of, black players. I think Wrench has more of a wild card appeal because of the mask. You can't see his face. Because his voice is modified. You don't really know what he sounds like. Because he's also not, I didn't play him as anyone really macho or overly masculine or toxic, anything like that. Like that aspect of Wrench I played very close to who I am. I'm a feminist. I'm an equal rights person. I don't like all that toxic macho garbage. You know what I mean? I think men can be vulnerable. Men can cry. Men can the color pink or magic unicorn goat battle warrior princess stuff. I love that Wrench loved that stuff. Wrench they revealed that he's bisexual. I love that.
Yes,
I think that ties into everything super well. So I think because I didn't, just to finish this thought, because I didn't push him in a definitive direction, it left a lot of slack for people to kind of interpret Wrench as they wanted him to be. So I had people, saying like, is Wrench trans or could he be trans? And like, if you think of him as trans, go for it. If he has value to you as a trans person, go for it. I'm not trans, and I wouldn't want to play a trans character because I don't think I could represent that demographic well, because it's not a reality I've lived, and I believe in representation. But is Wrench gay? Is he in love with Marcus? Oh, I ship Marcus and Wrench, or Wrenches as they call it. Go for it. I have no problem. To me, once something becomes pop culture, it belongs to everybody, and however it brings you joy, I'm good with, as long as you're not punching down or shitting on other people or demeaning anyone else. Like, I wouldn't want people to portray Wrench as a misogynist or a racist or a transphobic or a homophobic person, right?
Yeah.
That I'd say no to. But anything else, have fun. So, who's behind the mask? It could be anyone. So I think a lot of people invested themselves into Wrench for that reason. Whereas if you're like a white person who's a woman and who's bisexual, Marcus, for example, is harder to relate to because that's not his lived experience, So it was wonderful. And then since Bloodline, I've gotten even more love from people and people writing to me saying, I'm so glad Wrench is bi and I can't believe it. And he was my coming out character and he's my comfort character. And
it's amazing.
I identify with him and he helped me through some dark times. And I'm like, holy shit, like, I never thought of any of that. I was just like, do your job, do the best you can do, have fun, be truthful, all that acting stuff. Yeah. So for this to come out of it, it's just this incredible, incredible bonus. And I'm really blessed to be a part of it.
I feel like it was done in Bloodline in such a good way as well.
Absolutely.
Like they didn't it wasn't a massive fuss. It's not part of his character. It's him. Like it's just, it's Wrench. Nothing's changed.
It's not an issue, right? Like as someone who's into equality and, as a feminist and all that, like whenever I see feminism handled and I want to be careful here. I don't want to, opine on feminism as a man. But when I see, an attempt to handle female characters, to balance out female characters in fiction, often I find it's not done with as good an approach as they could. And again, I'm not saying that women who try to do this are wrong. Women know feminism better than I do for sure. But like, when I think of the best female characters I've seen in films, it's never about them being a woman. It's about them just doing what they have to do in the situation, that their gender is irrelevant in a sense. So it's the same thing in Bloodline, where the fact that Wrench was married to a guy is irrelevant. I don't mean that it's not a good thing. I mean, it doesn't matter. It matters as much as the fact that I'm married to a woman. You know what I mean? Like, to me, they're equal. Yeah. So it was never a source of problems for him. He never got attacked because of it, or beat up, or demeaned, or lessened because of it. No one attacked him. Everyone just kind of accepts it. No one even goes, "Wait a minute, you're married to a guy?" Like, because who cares, right? And again, I mean that in the best way, not to minimize the issues, but when you just have something as a matter of fact, people accept it because you're not trying to highlight it or force it upon anyone. Mm-hmm. It's just there. You know, one of my favorite female characters of all time is Ripley from Alien and Aliens. Yeah. And the reason why she's so well written is the part was originally written, I believe, for a man, and they cast a woman, but they didn't change anything. So it's not about her being male or female. It's about her, you know,
being this badass
and being a badass and trying to survive the situation. You know, so
that's sort of similar to how they play Horizon Zero Dawn. Aloy, cool. She's a girl, cool. Yeah, but she's also insanely fun to play as, a great character with a really cool story. That wouldn't affect it if she was male or female. It's just cool that we actually get another badass female character to play as.
And when if you can describe the character and what they do, and without saying their gender, and it's, you know, it sounds just as cool. It always does, usually. Then you know you're doing the right thing, because like you could describe Aloy in an ungendered way. When you find out she's a woman, you don't go, "Oh, wait a minute, she's a woman? Women can't do that stuff." Of course they can, you know?
Yes.
So I thought that was really well handled. It was subtle, but it also proves you don't need something overt, because everyone picked up on it and everyone was super excited about learning that.
I was as well. It's like this, because obviously there's a bunch of different voice notes left throughout Wrench's base in the game. And just the way it was done, it's like, when I found it, I was like, "Oh shit, that's pretty cool." Obviously it is a big thing because it's just cool, you know, major AAA game. But then I was like, cool. All right, let's go back to playing as Wrench, you know? In like,
that's it. And
best way possible.
Exactly. And the you know, when Disney released Beauty and the Beast, the live action one, you know, they're like, it has the first gay character and has the first gay official in the Disney, and everyone's like, oh, and then it's like, I haven't seen the film, but it's like 2 seconds on the.
They've done that,
or same thing with I think the last Star Wars film. They're like, oh, the first ever gay kiss in a Star Wars film, and it's this quick little peck between two women in the background. Like Disney's like, don't look too long. And it's like, guys, come on.
Yeah, it's like with the new the new Cruella de Vil film. There's a character played by John McCree who played a guy called Jamie, which is a brilliant. Everybody's talking about Jamie. It's a brilliant musical about this kid that's, you know, come of age, wants to be a drag queen, and he plays this gay character in Cruella. And they made such a big deal about it. It's like, yeah, but he's just a fun character as well.
Yeah, but like, what does it matter, right? That he's right. Like they try to, because they're trying to cash in, and that's what I have an issue with. Is like, stop making it an issue, right? I'm not saying if you ignore an issue it'll go away. Issues have to be addressed, redressed, systemic change, all that stuff, of course. But I find, you know, if you, like, I used to say to my friends, like, you know, back in the day, like in the 80s, if you had a movie about a white president, it was always like, there's terrorists in the White House, or he finds out he has a secret son, or he's falling in love, or there's aliens invading, right? And if it's a black president, the movie's about the fact that he's a black president.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To me, that's the divide, right? That's where it stops. So I find with all the things you're talking about and I'm talking about is that. And I think, you know, Watch Dogs is more of the first category where it's like, who cares, right? He's bi, he's whatever. You know, you take note of it. You go, oh, that's cool. And like you said, you keep on playing Watch Dogs right after.
Yeah, because still Wrench's character, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It changes nothing to who he is.
Exactly. So let's just talk about Bloodline. How did that come about? Because it was 4 years, well, at least 6 years, but 5 years after the second game. But obviously, behind the scenes, probably would have happened way before any of us knew something was going to happen with even Legion came out. So how did Bloodlines come about? Was there discussion about Wrench being in the game or being in a DLC? And how did that all work?
It was actually fairly last minute as far as I was concerned. When Watch Dogs 2 wrapped, I didn't know what the future held. Legion certainly wasn't, I think they conceptualized of Legion fairly soon after Watch Dogs 2, because I remember I knew some of the writers kind of moved on to that project and they were talking to us about it confidentially. But we didn't know what the plan was, and it looked like the plan wasn't to continue with DedSec San Francisco.
Yep.
So, I just kind of forgot about it, continued on with my career, whatever else. And then when Legion was announced and I saw what the concept of the game was, I'm like, oh, then there's even less chance of coming back as Wrench, because it's a play as anyone type of game. So why have, characters? But then when Aiden was announced as being a playable character as DLC, then I was like, wait a minute. If they start mining past games for characters, if they take the standout character, the only character really from Watch Dogs 1, then what's to stop them mining DedSec San Francisco for additional characters? And I'm like, I'm guessing out of all the people in DedSec SF, that it'd be Wrench or Marcus they'd probably want to bring back. Maybe T-Bone, but he already had a DLC, so I wasn't sure. Yeah. And sure enough, not long after Aiden was announced, I got an email from my agent saying, are you willing to go to Toronto to reprise the role of Wrench in the DLC? And then I flipped out. I was the best news I had all year. The best news I've had in several years, because I love playing him. It's the most fun I've ever had in my career, is playing Wrench. So to be able to travel and go back to playing him, but meet a new team of people and work with a new project, it was awesome. I was sad I wasn't, because I didn't hear about anyone else being called in. So I was sad to have to go at alone. Well, I mean, without my buddies. But it was a tremendous experience, and I'm so grateful we got to do it. And I thought it was a really clever move of Ubisoft to do that, because it kind of retroactively reinvigorated Legion to have characters added to it. I've seen people almost kind of like point out to, and I don't mean to disparage Legion. I'm really enjoying playing Legion right now. But, some people were saying, look, this underscores how important character-driven storytelling is. Because I'll admit, I played a little bit with the other operatives, people off the street, and I'm like, I can't invest. I don't know who these people are. I don't care. But Wrench, every time he opens his mouth, like, he's been arrested once and hospitalized once in my game, and I'm not playing with permadeath. And each time I'm like, no, Wrench! I'm invested. I really am. So I'm hoping that'll inform maybe the franchise moving forward. Whether that means I come back or not, whatever. I'm not saying it so that I can come back. I just believe in good storytelling. But I would certainly come back as Wrench if they asked me to. Yeah. And, one of the kind of early on ideas, I don't think it got very far, but I thought it was a really cool concept. I heard, at least it was a rumor. I don't know how true this is, but I'd heard that initially kind of the overall hope from some of the writers were that you'd have a Watch Dogs 1 set in wherever it is. Where's Watch Dogs 1 set? Chicago. 2 in San Francisco. 3 maybe in London, 4 somewhere else. And then later on have an Avengers type event where you gather the DedSec cells from all over the world and form like a supercell of hackers with all these different characters. And that would have been, I think, an incredible idea.
I could picture him going to
it could still happen. You never know, right?
I could picture him going to Tokyo, places like that. That's been on some fans' list for a while as well. But
you can kind of Assassin's Creed up Watch Dogs too. You know what I mean? With different cells in different places, different approaches, immersed in that culture. And I think if any two Ubisoft franchises could or should cross over in the future, I think it should be Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs. I think that'd be incredible.
Don't talk about crossovers. So the communities together, So in the first Watch Dogs game, there was a fixer contract. We had to go and assassinate someone called Olivia Gurney, who is in Assassin's Creed, I think Black Flag, as a Ubisoft, as an Abstergo CEO, where they're making the games. And when you assassinate him in Watch Dogs, literally same name, works for Abstergo, and in Black Flag, it turns around and says, he's gone for a meeting in Chicago. So everyone was like, in the beginning, oh yes, it's all connected. This makes so much sense because all the technology and, you know, all the different things they do. It makes a lot of sense. But then Ubisoft came out and like, yeah, that's not connected. But then now in Bloodline, not Bloodline, in Legion, in a few months, we have a new character coming out called Darcy, who is part of the Assassin Brotherhood. So they're teasing. They have done for years. So hopefully down the line, we might get something confirmed.
Yeah, I had heard about that, and my understanding is it's more of an Easter egg than like an official canon continuity thing. But I believe someone or I had come across something at one point that had an Abstergo kind of connection. Yes. Maybe it was in a Ubisoft office in a game somewhere in one of the games. But there's been Easter eggs in the past where you could see there was crossover a little bit.
In Watch Dogs, the first game, you can find people playing Abstergo games.
So it's possible. You never know. Yeah. I mean, I think video games and all entertainment are all headed towards this like singularity, nexus, gathering. You know, you look at Marvel, it's not just movies now. It's movies and TV. Video games, we don't talk about that. But eventually, I'm sure they'll work in an IP, a virtual reality, 100%. Something, you know, an MMORPG, something. You know, all the Splinter Cell, Ghost Recon, Watch Dogs, Assassin's Creed, all those titles easily could be blended or mixed. You know what I mean? I really see ourselves as a society when it comes to games moving towards like a Ready Player One type of you log in, you take your favorite characters. There's Master Chief, there's King Kong, there's Mario, there's Samus, Samus. Whatever you want. So there's, Wrench, who's wearing a wrench piloting the Hulkbuster, because that's my jam. That you just go and you just pick the world you want. Or, I had this great idea, this concept I thought that'd be amazing for them to do down the line is like you could blend like game worlds where like, okay, I'm playing Splinter Cell, so I'm going to be in that building downtown, trying to steal files. But those two guys are having like a superhero battle on the other end of the town. They knock out a power grid. It might, kill the cameras, and I could take advantage. Like, have connected worlds where people play different genres of games that still have like real world connectivity. To me, that's just a question of time, computing power, development.
If you want to do it, I'll back it. I'll back it if you want to.
I'm not much of a game developer, but I'm positive I'm gonna live to see that in my lifetime, like some kind of broader encapsulation of various IPs, especially as more and more IPs get bought up by more and more like singular parent companies. I mean, Disney owns everything now. Disney wanted they could do like a Star Wars Marvel crossover. You know what I mean? And Thanos fights Vader, and people would be like, "Yeah, I'll pay money for that."
Talk about big IPs. Netflix is starting their own gaming company.
Yeah, so I heard
that's going to be massive. Like the amount of money Netflix can just put behind it.
Video games are huge, though. It's a huge industry.
I swear at some point GTA 5 was the biggest selling, not just game, but biggest selling piece of entertainment ever. Yeah. At some point. Yeah, and that just shows that
Rockstar has been smart. They've been continuously updating and releasing content. And that's what I mean. Like GTA is more of a live service game now, right? So Fortnite, same thing. Fortnite's like a live service. Oh, you want to play as Batman, Thanos, Superman, Luke, whatever, let's do it. They have like, I don't play Fortnite, but
trailers and stuff.
I can't ignore it. It's so popular. I think that's where we're going. Games as service, free to play games. Just jump in, and then we'll buy your skins and unlock your characters, and we'll have our fun and do whatever. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just, everything's evolving continually. So it's exciting as an actor because I don't know what kind of work I'll be doing 5-10 years from now. But I'm fairly confident it'll be something, exciting and maybe innovative. Hopefully, if I could be a part of that'd be awesome.
All right, so I have a few more questions before we get into just some fan ones. So another question is, so obviously we learned that between Watch Dogs 2 and Watch Dogs Legion, Bloodline, Wrench has had this enormous history, not only with the SF DedSec disbanding, but also getting married, creating his own company, becoming this essentially pretty much almost a tech giant. and then obviously coming to London and working building robots. Would you, because I know for myself I would, like to see some form of a game, either a full length game, or the 6-7 hour DLC like we have with Bloodline, just of Wrench's time throughout this period in his life that is pretty substantial to how his character has grown from Watch Dogs 2 to Watch Dogs Legion, because he's still smart mouth, wacky character, but he's not just that. Like, for instance, spoilers alert for anyone that hasn't played Bloodline, when Aiden gets almost assassinated in the elevator, at first it was your savior's here, it's Wrench, but then instantly he turns into this basically killing machine, ready to go out and exact revenge and do whatever it needs to be done to solve the problem. Would you like to see, or would you like to play, because I'd like to see a game where you see his character progress and you see his time before Legion?
That certainly is an interesting concept. I can't say I've ever really thought about that. And, like I was saying earlier, when I first played Watch Dogs 2, a lot of people were saying, oh, let's have, DLC with Wrench. I'd love to play with Wrench. Can we have a game where he's the protagonist? And I remember thinking, I think part of what makes Wrench work well is that he is a supporting character. Like, I'm not going to let my ego get in the way and go, I'd love a lead and to be the main character. But like I said, Legion kind of softened that idea of mine because he holds up better than I thought. But, what Bloodline and Watch Dogs 2 have in common is that they're both manifestations of Wrench's persona being put forward to deal with a problem, right? So in Watch Dogs 2, Wrench is his barrier, his shield against the world. Dead Sex fighting against Bloom and all that stuff. And then you find out in Legion that not long after that, Wrench went legit. I don't have a character Bible to draw from. Like, literally, I have the same information the fans have because I have the script, and the script is what we perform. But, I can talk to the director and the writers, which the fans can't, so that helps. But, Wrench basically kind of went legit. I think he kind of realized, okay, the mask and all, it's fun, but it's not pushing me forward in life. So let me fly straight, I guess, put the mask aside, go back to being Reginald Blackman. I love that name. Married some guy that didn't work out great. They had a bad divorce. He started he had his own company, cutting edge of technology. Rampart then came along, and more spoilers, by the way, if people haven't played the game yet, and kind of convinced him to join him. Wrench's idealism got the better of him, space flight, moving out into the stars, bioengineering a new humanity and all this stuff. It's stuff that Wrench would joke about in Watch Dogs 2. Can I get wings? I'd love to have wings, This is kind of what it was speaking to. So he went for it, got fucked over. So then, in order to deal with it, he puts that mask back on, becomes Wrench again, and kind of takes that persona back out. So the reason why I'm saying that is, I think an interim game could work if we're covering that period, but it would almost have to be as Reginald and not as Wrench, you know what I mean? Because if not, you have Wrench in Watch Dogs 2, Wrench in this adventure in the middle, and then Wrench in Legion, and he's just always this guy. And does he shower and sleep with the mask on? You know what I mean? He's a person. The mask is fun, but he's got to eat. I'm sure he wants to kiss his husband when he was married. You know what I mean? So, but that could be interesting to see a side of Wrench we don't get to see, which is his more grounded, realistic side. But what I wonder is, not realistic, but his grounded, more vulnerable side. But what I wonder is, would people find that interesting? Because how much of Wrench is the appeal of the mask and the consequence-free attitude and the stick it to the man type of thing? How much of Wrench's appeal is he's this nice, caring, vulnerable guy who believes in his friends, who wants to do what's right and wants to use his power to help those who don't have any, especially when they're being taken advantage of by people who do have power. So I don't know, because I do think that has a lot of appeal too. You know what I mean?
Yep. So to counter why, I don't know if you played it, but one of my all-time favorite games that I actually cried at the ending of, because I just got so attached to it, was the new Spider-Man made by Insomniac Games.
One of the 3 games in my life that has made me bawl my eyes out. That was one of them.
And then beforehand, obviously, everyone has been known to the characters, the wacky, sarcastic, fun, like loving Spider-Man. I didn't expect to see that side to him at the end of the game, but I myself and many others like yourself have really enjoyed it and loved it. So for going from that, I personally feel like fans would love to see this other side to Wrench, to see Reginald, to see Reggie, because it adds more to his story. Not only did they get to play more with the character, they get to learn more. And just based now, Ubisoft, I know you're watching this because I'm going to send it to you after it's done. I am. Basically, it could start off him, the DedSec disbanding. We don't need to know why. I don't personally feel like we need to know why. I feel like there's always a little mystery that needs to be left. We see him starting out, him about his mask, him go through life, something happens, and then obviously at the end, the big moment where he has to become Wrench again for some reason. I feel like that story and that progression, where we see him at the end of Watch Dogs 2, after having, being kidnapped, mask taken off, leading to the expansion of the DedSec cell and the progression into becoming Wrench again. I feel like that'd be something so cool to see. Because not only we get new locations, new characters, it would just be a brilliant story, but it would need to be similar to Bloodline. It can't be how Legion is set out, if you get what I mean. It has to, I feel like it has to be a linear story.
It has to be his story. He can have allies, he can, do something with T-Bone or something at some point. But I think what would really make or break that, though, would be, as with all things, in my opinion, the writing, right? I mean,
yes.
How compelling is this story? I was nervous when I got the script to Watch Dogs Bloodline because it wasn't the same team of writers. So, and, I worked with them and we created together this persona, which was so specific. I was like, how does anyone else, anyone else who writes Wrench, they're going to be writing their version, their interpretation of basically my character, I guess. Yeah. He's in part my character, and I was super impressed. Like, they really nailed a lot of his attitude, his impressions, his expressions, and anything I felt was a bit off, I was more than welcome to come in and wrenchify it. It's what we call that, wrenchify the script, and or ad-lib stuff on the day, or come in with notes. I'd go over my script, make notes. Oh, I could say it this way, or I think this would be funny, or I wonder if I can make this reference. If a line could use some punching up, I'd punch it up. And the writers were fine with that because they were very open, which is wonderful. So the writing would need to be there to have a compelling story. But the writing needs to be there for a compelling movie or video game or anything. Without the writing, that's the scaffolding. 100%. You know what I mean? Without it, you've got nothing. But I think it could work. The times in Watch Dogs 2 and Legion where Wrench doesn't have the mask, I don't know if people have noticed this, but the persona leaves as well, right? He doesn't take the mask off and go, okay, real talk now. This guy's fucked me over, and that'd be weird because he's there, he's seeing his face. And in fact, when I play Legion and I take Wrench's mask off, I took his mask off, I shaved his head, I gave him a bit of a beard, because I'm like, oh, he kind of looks like me a little. And then he's dressed nice, and he's talking to someone, and he's talking like this, and with the digitization still. And I thought it was super jarring, and I'm like, he doesn't seem like a real person anymore. Like, without that mask,
it doesn't make sense.
You lose the fact that he's putting on an act. But when he takes the mask off and talks to Marcus, he's talking like this. He's talking in a regular voice. When he's talking to Aiden, he's like, hey, real talk, man. Okay, look. This guy fucked me over. He's going to fuck you over. Yep. I mean, it's still my voice, but he's not doing this, this higher energy motor mouth persona that he has, It's like Spider-Man quips and makes jokes when he's fighting to kind of diffuse his tension and his nervousness, but Peter Parker doesn't talk that way. You know what I mean? So we need to explore that as well, but I think that could be interesting to show another aspect of him.
Yeah, I feel like it could really work. Sure. Next question, the last question for me, and then we'll move to some fan questions. What was it like working with Ada, Noah Jenkins? What was it like? Did you feel intimidated at all, or was Was it welcoming? How was it working with essentially the OG of the series?
Well, I was able to work with him in the first Watch Dogs.
Oh yeah,
because I played the ND hack fixer guy, Raul. So he threatened me in that scene. We got to work together, so I got to know his work ethic and who he was, and I really liked him when I worked with him back in Watch Dogs. And then so when I knew he was coming back for the DLC, I wouldn't say I'm intimidated. I think I may have been a tiny bit beforehand because Noam was pretty well established, and I was kind of still starting out. I think I've come a long way as an actor. I'm a lot more confident now in what I can do. So, I really viewed everyone there as equals. And there were some very accomplished actors, working there. But there's also some actors who were, maybe newer to the game. But it didn't matter. Like, everyone was so great. And it's not about hierarchy. Everyone's just there to work. You know what I mean? And what I love with Noam is he has a very different approach to acting than I do. Like, I'm very intuitive. I tend to just jump in and see what comes to mind. Whereas Noam is a bit more analytical. He'll be like, why is he doing this when he could do this? And isn't this about this? And if he's really trying to convey this about his past, I don't think he'd necessarily say this to this person. And this was great for me because then it gave me two perspectives on a scene. My intuition, or three actually. My intuition, Noam's perspective, and then the director's perspective, So we got to workshop things. He's a very patient guy, very generous, really affable. We had lunch together a bunch of times, talked about his kids and, what he's up to. And he's also a Montreal resident.
That's cool.
Not that I ever run into him here, but super nice guy. Such a pro and really good at. I thought we had really good chemistry. We bounced really well off of each other. There's no ego involved, right? There's never any, I want to be cooler than Wrench, or I want to be better than Aiden. We're just there to tell the story, whatever that means. So, I thought it was funny when they first released a bit of teaser footage and they're fighting on the drone and Aiden falls off. People are like, what? Wrench wouldn't be able to beat up Aiden. That's bullshit. And I'm like, it is bullshit. That's not the whole story. Play the game and you'll see Wrench gets lucky. He throws a flash bomb and hits Aiden, but he throws it too high, almost kills him by accident. He feels terrible afterwards. Then Aiden kind of, hits a post and falls off. Later, when Aiden shows up to Wrench's place, he
just kicks the door down.
There's
and
no contest, you know what I mean? And I am fine with that, I was not I think I should give him a run for his money. No, Wrench isn't a fighter. He can beat people up in the game.
Wrench knows who Aiden is and knows
he knows who he is, and I recognize that, and I don't let my ego get in the way because it's not about that. And look, Wrench is cool enough on his own. He doesn't need to usurp anyone to be more relevant or to be, you know what I mean? So it was a really nice experience working with Noam. I'd do it again in a second for sure.
Well, I'm sure all of us would want that. The second DLC.
I'm sure.
Confirmed. Okay,
don't quote me now.
I promise I would take that snippet and put it somewhere. I mean, what?
Put on loop somewhere, Watch Dogs 4 confirmed.
Oh, I died.
Half-Life 3 confirmed already. Why not?
No. Okay, so we're going to go to some fan questions now.
Sure.
So Matt or Dated Rome, a good friend of mine, asked, just randomly, what's your favorite dinosaur and why?
I saw that question. I loved it. I've been a huge fan of dinosaurs, I am actually, since I was a kid. One of my first oral presentations in class was on the Brontosaurus, which now is the Apatosaurus. Or did they take that back? I forget. But I love dinosaurs. I love Jurassic Park and all that. So that being said, I think the dinosaur that visually impressed me the most was in Jurassic Park 3. So the Spinosaurus. It's not the best movie, but it's one of those guilty pleasure movies for me, Jurassic Park 3. It's kind of like Terminator 3 or Alien 3, where you're like, to me, that's not canon, but it's a fun little what-if, one-shot kind of exploration of that world or that concept. So I love all dinosaurs, but I'd say the Spinosaurus is probably my current favorite one from my Jurassic Park 3 fanboy days.
See, when it comes to that, I'm pretty basic. I'm just like T-Rex.
I'd say T-Rex or Velociraptor, but they're so common choices, and I like to be off the beaten path sometimes a little with my, not to be contrarian, just I don't like necessarily mainstream stuff. But then again, I love Marvel, and that's pretty mainstream. So
Oh yeah.
I don't want to be a hypocrite.
I got it. So then we got the next one by Sarah Bake, and he says, "How was it to adapt yourself to a much more aged Wrench this time round? Did he feel like he had changed too much since Wrench is older, and obviously he's been through a lot now? And lastly, what did you think about Wrench's development in the story and how it felt to play him?"
So playing him older, I didn't find to be very difficult because, I mean, look, I'm a little bit older from when I first played him. He's a lot older. But I think what would have been more difficult would have been to play the interim section that we were just talking about, because that's, I think, we probably did the most change. Wrench in Bloodline is kind of him revisiting a familiar skin or persona. So it was more like putting on an old jacket for him or riding a bike again, playing Wrench. So for me as an actor, it was easy to just kind of slip back into that persona because he never really went away and have to like work it. What was he like again? Like Wrench is... A large part of Wrench is just me, just kind of cranked up a bit, Yeah. So it was fairly easy to do that. And the issues he had to deal with that were part of his past, they were all in the script and his backstory. So working a bit with the writers and the director, we got to figure that stuff out and kind of inject it subtly into the story. I thought it came across pretty well, like, him being married and the company stuff. Yeah. I thought that worked well. And what was the last part of that question? There was a third question on there.
How did it feel to play him again?
And I mean, that was it was amazing. Like to me, was also like putting on an old favorite jacket or riding a bike or something, strapping on my rollerblades after, 15 years of not using them and then being in the closet type of thing. You just kind of, you remember almost instantly. You remember those familiar joys, your instincts. How he moved, how he talked, his delivery was all just there because those like neural pathways are still there from 4 years ago. And then the new stuff you get to explore as an actor. So, he's divorced. He doesn't really talk to his Marcus anymore. But he's still in touch with Josh and Satara and T-Bone or whatever. So it's just adapting to new circumstances and new realities. I think that's probably the biggest challenge. Not that he was older, but that he was living in a different world, right? Some of the stuff, even, just a few years later, is stuff that back in the day, like I don't think Wrench could have even conceived of. So there's that too. I wouldn't say he's out of his depth, but he's still relying on the same tactics he used 10, 15 years ago for a brand new problem. And it still works, but Aiden got shot. You know what I mean? He didn't have DedSec with him. He almost dies a couple times. The threat level is higher than it was. So, like, he's not keeping up super well. You know what I mean? I think that was reflected in the script. So it'd be interesting if, we jumped ahead another 10 years. Like, what would that look like? Is Wrench just going to take a sledgehammer to everything? Is that going to not be effective anymore? Maybe that could be an interesting thing to explore as well. But it was a wonderful time coming back as Wrench.
One thing that I remembered was that I don't know if there was, but obviously in Watch Dogs 2 you took over the car, and obviously it's a remote controlled car, and then in Legion every car is basically self-driving.
Yeah,
I don't know if there is anything because I haven't come across it, but I would love just a little thing Wrench would have said, getting into it and it's self-driving, just something similar to how him and Marcus used to joke around. I thought that would be quite cool.
Yeah, because the Cyber Driver car. Yeah, but that's a good example. Like everything is so, like even the hacking now, like the things you can do in this game. Yes, but it's more effective. You have more options. Like I went into a building to do something, and then I took out a guard by arming a trap, and then another guard saw him. So then I hijacked a car that was parked and I ran the guard over. And then someone else showed up, so I hijacked the drone and shot the guard. And then they took out the drone, so I hijacked a turret and shot the drone. Like, it's just this kind of cascade
loop.
Like, you have, like, the more the world becomes technological, the easier it becomes to fuck with it, right? But I find that's kind of like a good reflection of the world today. 2,000 years ago, if there was a solar flare, the sky lights up for a while, you're like, meh, and you go back to tending your crops. Today, if there was another, like the Carrington event, when there was a massive solar flare in the late 1800s that basically fried a bunch of like telegraph machines. That's about it. If that were to happen today, entire power grids would go down. The net would go down. Infrastructure would collapse. It'd be chaos, right?
Yeah.
We're more advanced now than we've ever been, but we're more vulnerable to certain things. And I think Legion reflects that well. When Aiden does his like blackout attack, it just kills everything. Like, I don't remember if he could do that in the first game, but
you could, but you had to wait up to the end of the game before you unlocked, because it was such a big deal. It was such a big part of the story.
Right. Whereas now it's just
button done.
It refreshes every 30 seconds. You know what I mean? Like, it's like in the first Doom game, like you fought like some demon at the end, and he's like the big boss. And then in Doom 2, he's just like a mini boss. You know what I mean? There's worse things than him. So like I kind of like that idea of scaling in games. So I think it's a nice reflection of the not a nice reflection, but it's an accurate reflection of the world today, and it's kind of scary in a sense because everything's super fragile and kind of just balanced. And I don't think a lot of people realize that.
That's such a good answer. So I got another question by Retro Gameplays, and he goes, "Do you remember?" Oh no, this is go wrong. It's Puppy Catwell first. He said, "I'm not sure how it works for video games, but were there any of Wrench's lines that ended up in the main game that were ad-libbed?" And he also says, "It was such a surprise to hear you when he was playing Outer Worlds."
Yes, I do play. I play one or two characters in every Outer Worlds like game and DLC. So the first Outer World, I play like a weapons merchant. I think a guy who talks like this. I got a great deal for you, sir. Like one of those guys. And then I play a bunch of minor characters. And then the next one, I forget, I played some like crazy hyper person. Go figure. And then in Murder on Eridanus, I played also like a security guard and a whole bunch of dudes and like a guy who has like dogs or something. I forgot their names. But yeah, I'm sprinkled throughout the game, which is super fun. And that's true for a bunch of games I've been in. Sorry, what was the first half of that question again? I got kind of...
So were any of Wrench's lines that made the game ad-libbed?
Right. So in the Bloodline DLC, there were a few things I threw in a few scenes. I'd add a line or change things. I didn't ad-lib as in add lines as much as I changed lines. Okay. So, for example, at one point, Wrench walks in to see Sky Larson, and there's a giant hologram of her. The initial line was, "Ooh, cool hologram. Do you think if I touched it, it would burn my fingers?" Right? So I read that, and I'm like, okay, I see what he's saying, but no offense to the writers, but I'm like, I can make that funnier. What would Wrench do if he saw a giant hologram? The first thing he'd think of, because the first thing I think of is Star Wars, right? I think of Leia and R2. So the line became, cool hologram. Is this about the Death Star plans? Right? Like, that's the kind of joke Wrench would make. Yeah. And they liked it. The writer was laughing. They're on speaker. The director's like, okay, great, let's do it. And then when I was doing all the lines for Legion, because basically everything that was recorded for Legion for the different characters, I did as Wrench, because he could be either an operator or someone at the base. So then there was tons of lines that I'd either just ad-lib how I'm doing it on the day, or I'd come in with a suggestion if I looked at the script beforehand. Like, for example, when you do a mission for DedSec Cairo, at the end, I forget the woman's name. I forget her name. Amira? No, anyway, the woman from DedSec Cairo, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was thinking about Connie Robinson, who's the lead in the main hub.
Yeah, no, she's a DedSec Cairo. She's this Egyptian-sounding woman. Anyway, and she's like, okay, well, thanks for helping us, whatever, find some stuff. And I forget what the original line was, where Wrench was like, yeah, tell T-Bone I say hi, or something, because Ray's with them. So I'm like, oh, let's change it to this. And then I just went, all right, thanks, and tell Ray, nice hat, right? Because I know the value of that line because of Watch Dogs 2. I know the fans will go, I know exactly what he's talking about. the writers might not. They might not remember that one moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because you're a writer of a game doesn't mean you're a fan of that thing. You've put in 100 hours in it, you know? So I was able to personalize a lot of little things. And the change I'm most proud of, actually, is, spoiler alert, but at the end of the game, initially, Rempart, you know, when I hit next to him, I'm like, I'm not going to kill you. You're not worth it.
Yeah.
And I leave. He was just supposed to say, like, well, you know, I'm going to get you and I'm going to get your friends in DedSec 2. And they won't be safe. And then Wrench's supposed to kind of stop and turn around and put his mask back on. And I was like, can we please, I begged the director, I'm like, can we have Rempart name the members of DedSec by name? Because I think if Wrench hears the names of his friends, he'll know Rempart did his research, that he's being curious. And if he thinks they're really in danger, Wrench ain't going to be fucking around with this. So
absolutely.
I really pushed. Eventually we tried it. We liked it. We really worked that scene. But at the end, he's like, you know, Sitara and Josh and Marcus. And then I got to use that to go from this smirking, like, this guy's a piece of shit. I don't care what he threatens. I'm not afraid of him, to this kind of slowly, you know, oh my God, did you just mention my family? I'm going to kill you now, right? We think he's going to kill him. Spoiler, he doesn't. He does the right thing. I'm glad he doesn't kill him. But, like, you know, that's contributions that actors can give to a scene because they understand the character and the context, and the director is not so narrow-minded that there's not a way to try things and to do what's best for the game. So, you know, between Noam's suggestions, my own, even like my scenes with Noam, I'm like, what if I did this? Or what if, you know, instead of doing this, Noam, you try this and I'll do this, and yeah, let's try it and we'll do it. And like, oh, that works, or that doesn't work. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why you know, this game was so much fun to work on, is that it wasn't like, hey, welcome, Shawn, here's your script, say your lines, go home. It was like, let's workshop. We had a day of rehearsal, a day and a half of rehearsal. Let's workshop. Let's talk about the scenes, what we want, who we are, where this is going. The director would explain his vision. Oh, from this we're going to do, like, you know, the montage when Wrench is getting ready. Like, he explained that. I'm like, oh, okay, like in Commando. Got it. So he's like, do you have any suggestions? What would be funny here? So then I threw in a bunch of suggestions, like the knife thing, getting cut out, throwing the thing. You know, that was me.
Yeah.
Or the balls, you know, rolling them around. That's a little bit suggestive because Wrench is very juvenile. You know, in the first Watch Dogs, when he gets captured and he's like, you know, flipping him off with his middle finger. It's super juvenile. But that's Wrench. You know, that's his humor. Yeah. So as an actor, that's the dream, is to work on something where your input as an actor and as a creative is valued and used. And it wasn't like they're like, oh yeah, this is great, Shawn, throw it all in, and then cut. None of it's in the game. Like, it's all there. I say 90% and 95% of what I did or changed is all in the game. So I'm super happy about that, because I think it really served the story, you know?
Yeah, it's like you mentioned before, like at the beginning, it was acting and the whole industry essentially about collaboration. Always taking on new ideas and given new ideas, because you never know when the spark will happen. And from listening to your conversation, it sounds like mostly when you're there, you're in the moment, you're doing it, that stuff then comes out.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff you do, I mean, if you've done some acting, then you know what I'm talking about, but, you know, a lot of your best choices as an actor are almost never rehearsed. Yes. They're a bit of truth that come out in the moment. You might not keep that take, but if you connect to that, you'd be like, oh, wow, I really like that moment where you look at me instead of look at him, or when I do this, I'm going to keep that and kind of, you know, add that to the landscape of the scene. So, you know, when you're working with people you trust, and when everyone's aligned with what they want, which is, it's about the story, it's about the character, it's not about ego or screen time or number of lines or exposure. When everyone's aligned, as they were in this game, you get good work, because no one's ego is involved. We're all just focused on the story, and everyone's just giving of themselves, you know? So it's such a lovely, collaborative environment. And, you know, I don't have as much experience in film or TV, but the most collaborative environment I've ever worked in has been motion capture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That's why it's my favorite.
Yeah. That's awesome. So the next question is retro gameplays. And we actually touched on this before. And it's just, do you remember when you played the character of Raul Leonzo in Watch Dogs 1? Which obviously you do.
Yeah. So like I said, that's the tattooed face guy.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting question because, and I get the question totally. It's a justified question, but to me, it's a bit of a strange thing because I'm such a nerd. Like I love video games, and I'm so happy and involved with the work I do. It'd be impossible for me to forget a character like that because it's one of the first character I played in one of my favorite franchises. But I see why you'd asked a question because I'm sure some actors, especially bigger actors, might not remember. Like, hey, can you do this character in an animation? We'll pay you $50,000. It's half a day. You're like, it's fine, whatever. You voice some monster. You go home. You don't think about it. So, hey, you played this character. Like, who? You know what I mean? But if it's a spoken character, for sure I remember them always. Yeah. And even if it's non-spoken, I remember most of the work I've done. I don't follow everything. So, like, when you say, hey, your first job was,
the fuck, right?
Yes, because that was so long ago. But most of the jobs I've done.
I think your mic's cut out. Are you able? Do you hear me? I think your mic's cut out. There we go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello. Yep, I can hear you now.
Don't know what happened there. So like I've been in over 60 games in all sorts of roles, ranging from like bystander number 3 to like wrench or lion. So I don't remember everything I've done, but
the ones where
you've had... a lot of it sticks with me. Yeah, that's it. But if it's like, oh, you did half a day on Project Codename Vegas. I'm like, I don't know what game that is. I don't know who that character is. I don't remember, But anything significant, for sure, I remember.
No, that's pretty cool. Another somewhat basic question is, how was it to actually work on the series? Like, just your overall experience, not only with just doing some characters, like obviously Lion, but then doing the characters, and then having to press and the aftermath of it all. How was it to work with all of it compared to, I don't know, some of your previous work?
I mean, every game I work on, I enjoy. I can honestly say I've never worked at Ubisoft or any other company and had a terrible time of it. Making games is fun. Like, I would much rather do motion capture and voice work than film work. Because film work, you can be on set anywhere from like 8 to 16 hours, long days, many days in a row. It pays super well, but I'd rather a 9 to 5, 2-3 times a week, do the work, then have some time to work on other stuff, take care of myself, my my other personal projects. So, mocap's great. Performance capture is even better because it's face and voice as well. And then working, travel too, to me adds a little air of VIP to it, which is nice. It flatters your ego. You know what I mean? They pay for you to travel to another city, put you up in a hotel. In this case, I brought my wife and my dog with me, so I had like a working vacation. I got to spend time with my family and still play as Wrench, so that's even better. You know what I mean? I don't have to be away from my loved ones while I do something that I love. Meeting new people, new actors, working on new situations, all the hype around the game, all the new fans and followers that come from it, new people who are interested in my career or what I have to offer as a person. That's all awesome. I got onto Cameo lately, which is an app where you can request shout outs or voice things from actors. And that's been great. I've done like 10 of them already, which is shocking to me. I didn't think there'd be that high a demand, which also gives you some nice perspective as an actor, like how many people are into what you do. So it's just been, I've done other games, but they're usually like, this game is out. People are like, okay. And then it's whatever. But there's something about Wrench and Watch Dogs, but Wrench in particular, that people just really connect to. Because I'm Lion in Rainbow Six. Rainbow Six is much bigger than Watch Dogs. It's the biggest first-person shooter game in the world. And people love Lion, and I get a lot of love for Lion. But I'd say Lion doesn't galvanize, inspire, and drive people the way Wrench does. So this is like kind of, I guess every actor dreams of having like that part or that character. Chris Hemsworth is Thor, or Michael J. Fox is Marty McFly. Sigourney Weaver is Ripley. Mark Hamill is Luke. You know what I mean? They're not just those things. Every actor wants a varied career and not be tied to one thing. And I have that. But I don't mind at all being associated with a character that inspires people and makes people feel better about themselves, and they demand, technically, I don't think I probably wouldn't be doing this interview with you if the fans hadn't been so vocal about their love for Wrench, because that's what led to, Bloodline happening. Yep. People were like, we don't care about Watch Dogs 2. Wrench is annoying. We don't care. Ubisoft would be like, let's bring it back at all costs. You know what I mean? Because people love him so much, he came back. So for me to be able to reprise a role that I did 4 years ago without ever thinking this would happen, like the point of my performance was I want staying power. I want people to notice me. I was just doing my job, just trying to tell a story. I'm just trying to support Marcus in the game and, serve DedSec well and blah, blah, blah. And just by being honest with what I was trying to achieve, it kind of ballooned into this fandom and this love of it and this drive. And it's, I am proud that there's so many games that I made that people love. It's not like, I had that one character that one time people liked and everything else I did is crap. At E3 this year, Ubisoft announced, actually it wasn't just Ubisoft, I don't want to give this away, but some of the companies, of all the companies that announced games, 3 of the games I'm in, right? 2 of them have been announced. One was Watch Dogs Legion, Bloodline. The other one was Rainbow Six Extraction. That's coming out. It got delayed. It's coming out in January. But another company announced another game, and I'm like, I'm in that one too, and I've got a pretty cool part, but I can't talk about it because it's not out yet. But I was like, that's awesome. It's not like, I have my one game, it's going to be gone after a few months. Because
you have games. Like, I feel like you're being a bit too modest as well, because you are, because these, for me as a fan, so obviously growing up with the games, growing up to want to do acting as well, I feel like you're being too modest. Like, you have this character. Yes, it's everyone else, but without you, your voice, your input, the character wouldn't be there. And that goes for all the games. That goes for, obviously, Duccio is one of the most recognizable names you can admit, in the Assassin's Creed franchise. Obviously, everyone knows Machiavelli. Everyone knows Ezio's sister, Ezio's brothers, everything. But as soon as you mention Duccio, everyone who has played Assassin's Creed knows who Duccio is. And that goes for Wrench. And then, obviously, with the Outlast games as well, they know you and they know your voice. So stop being too modest. You've done some amazing things.
Bill. All right, Bill. I know, but thank you. I do appreciate that. And I fully admit that one of my things as an actor in my career is I used to at least devalue myself constantly. I've gotten better with that, except I think what I think I'm owed, or not owed, but like what I've earned, let's say. Yep. But I also always want to make sure to have like one foot on the ground, both feet on the ground if possible, to stay grounded. I never want to think I'm better than someone or more deserving than someone, because everyone's deserving. Everyone has their own thing they're good at. I happen to be good at this. I happen to have a fair amount of success with this. It's not luck. It's hard work. And opportunity and belief and support. I freely admit that without my wife supporting me in the early years, in the lean years, I don't know if I would have continued on as an actor. I might have quit. So like my parents, my friends, my peers, my success is due to all those people, So I never want to forget that, because that's important. I never want to work on a production and think this is all about me. Because look, without that guy who picks me up in the morning that's not a film set, not really. For mocap, my mocap's like, find your own way to work. But the people who do your makeup, or who do your catering, or who make your costume, or the technicians who suit you in the mocap suit, the guy who runs the soundboard, the guy who greets you when you come in and makes sure that you don't need anything. Like, without all those people, there's no reason for me to be there. You know what I mean? So I always want to make sure I'm aware of that, because I really believe in the power of collaboration and everyone kind of getting their due. And, you know, I am the one lucky thing that applies to my career is I'm lucky that my job usually entails me being the face of, or the voice at least, of what's being put forward. So so that's great for me. It's good for my career, for my visibility, for my finances. But I don't want that ever to become it's
the reason
only
why you do it.
Me, right? It's like,
So to speak.
yes, I'm good at what I do. That's fine. I admit that. And it's fine to admit that. But I wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for the people at Ubisoft who cast me, the people who vouched for me, who believed in me, the people who directed me, who coached me, who helped me, who supported me. All those people are part of Wrench too, you know what I mean? So I always want to make sure that I kind of keep some perspective. But that being said, I do pat myself on my back on occasion, go, good for me. I'm in a lot of, you know, AAA games coming out. There's more to come. I'm sure there's stuff on the horizon that I haven't even seen yet. And I'm very blessed to do it because there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. So I really can't complain.
It's amazing. And we all, from the sets, because I've done a lot of extra work on some big productions. And we all
I've done a few of those as well back in the day.
The catering team are the best. They're the heroes. They're the real unsung heroes. The catering team are.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
Yes.
Well, the PAs actually, the production assistants, they're the first to arrive on set. They're the last to leave every day, right?
Yeah.
To me, that's just as valuable as the guy who's in front of a camera for 10 minutes and then in his trailer for 3 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not devaluing that either. I'm just saying the guy in front of the camera, I don't think he's any more valuable a person than the PA or the hair person or the janitor or whoever's working on the production, you know? Because everyone chose to do the jobs they're doing for a paycheck, but also for the greater good, for the project, and because they're passionate about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So especially in the beginning of 2021, when in the UK anyway, when they started opening up productions again, obviously having to go do COVID tests the day before, those people as well, like they still work for the production. They're not, you know, necessarily part of the medical team. They work for the production. Like, it's not necessarily their job, but they're still doing it. So, you know, it's still everyone else is working to get it done. Yeah, make the production a thing. And from that, obviously, I see, especially where you're coming from, with the praise goes to the production team more than, you know, the actor, essentially.
Right, because I'm just one of, 30, 40, 60, 70 people, right? Mm-hmm. If there wasn't anyone behind the board running the computer when I'm doing mocap, well, I'd be waving my arms around in an empty room for nothing, you know what I mean?
Honestly. And then, right, so we've got one more question.
Sure.
That, I don't know if you can answer or not, but are you going to be in the Outlast Trials?
So I can't answer that question, unfortunately, because that falls under the category of talking about games that haven't been announced. I know the Outlast Trials have been announced in terms of people know it's coming, but they haven't announced the cast or the characters. Yeah. I will say this, if I can be cryptic a bit, is a lot of people have asked me if I'll be coming back to do a voice work or a character in Outlast, which I get. But that's not the only way to work on a video game, is what I'm saying. So take that for what it's worth. I could be involved in a satellite manner. I could not be involved at all. I could be involved directly as a lead. It's vague. But, you know, for example, in Outlast 2, I didn't just play Blake. I also did mocap for about 80 to 90% of the inhabitants of Templegate, is that what it's called? So the syphilitics, the orgy scene people, most of the people chasing you around, this is true, most of the people chasing you around trying to kill you, a lot of it was me doing motion capture. I don't just do voice work. So, you know, there's fight choreography, there's stunt work, you know, there's directing, there's all things actors can do on a project. So it is essentially possible. Yeah, that's not essentially just doing voice work or stuff like that. So while I can't say if I am involved and if I am, how I'm involved, it is a game that's produced in Montreal, so it's certainly possible. But I guess we'll have to wait until it's out to see. Yeah.
No worries. And then just one more question for me. Is there any inkling that Wrench will come back at some point? Has there been any talks about it?
So I guess that would fall under the category of also nope, in the sense that if I had a meeting with Ubisoft,
someone somewhere,
I wouldn't be able to spoil that or reveal that. But I'll leave it with, I think it's possible Wrench could come back, but that's based less on anything I've discussed with anyone and more on me just speculating that, Bloodline was like a shot of adrenaline to Legion. It kind of like spruced everything up and kind of reinvigorated the franchise a bit, showed the world, the fans, and Ubisoft. I'm sure someone's taking notes that character-driven stuff is more valuable. So I think it's possible Ubisoft would, want to cash in on that again in the future. Whether it's a cameo by Wrench in something, whether it's a narrative driven by Wrench. Personally, I'd be surprised if Watch Dogs 4 was about Wrench. You know what I mean? I think that might be beating a dead horse a little, especially because he was just around.
Yeah.
But, a crossover or some kind of like unified singularity thing, like I said, that's possible. With video games, like they're here to stay. It's not a phase. It's not a bubble. Not going.
There's no way.
I've worked on other projects that have been delayed, not even announced yet because of the pandemic. But I've worked on a project which is like, hey, we're rebooting this game. We're remastering this game. We're redoing this game. And I find myself working with the actor who did the voice 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You know what I mean? Maybe not 30 years, but, like people who, Michael Keaton is coming back as Batman in the Flashpoint.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
Mad.
So you never know, right? I'm sure when he did Batman, it was like, I'm sure one day DC will have a multiversal crossover event and they'll need me to reprise the cape and cowl. He was like, I'm done. Yeah. I'm sure he thought he was done. Just like me with Wrench. I thought I was done. I didn't want to be done, but I thought I was done. And then I just got an email one day. You never know what every day will bring. And I love that about acting. I mean, it's nerve-wracking, but it's also cool. Yeah. Got an email and I saw, to reprise the role, : it said Wrench, and it was in bold. And I remember staring at that. I'm like, am I seeing that? Is this for real? Holy shit. Right? So you never know. Maybe you'll pop up in another franchise. Maybe some new technology will come out in 3-4 years and it'll be perfect for that story. Maybe we'll never see him again. Maybe they'll do a Watch Dogs movie. Maybe they'll do an animated series and ask me to voice. I don't know.
That could be quite cool.
I'd love to. I mean, all I know is that when something is popular and people respond well to it, the people who own those IPs usually like making money. That usually means mining that. I just hope they do so in a respectful way that continues to honor the character and what he stands for, as opposed to some franchises that kind of just start cashing in and cheapening things just to make a quick buck. You know what I mean? I love working. It's nice to make money as an actor, but my primary drive is, what's the story we're telling? Is there a story? We're storytellers as actors. What's the story? If the story is we want to make money, I'm less interested in that. I don't want to cheapen out. Money's nice, but it's not why I'm an actor. I'm an actor to tell stories, to entertain, to educate, to make people think, whatever. If I can do that, in a straightforward manner as possible, that's when I'm at my happiest. Yep. And so hopefully anything else that does come from Wrench will be, a furthering of the character and of the story.
Not just a cash grab.
Right. But I also think we're lucky enough that unlike movies mostly, where they're like, oh, this is popular, let's just knock out a sequel right away, and it's empty, it's soulless garbage. I find video games, you can't just knock out a video game, right? Yeah. You can be like, let's shoot a movie in 3 months and release it in 6 months, and who cares? We'll make our money back on opening, and then who cares? But video games, there's a lot more people and time and coding involved. You don't just knock off it. Let's do a cheap Wrench knockoff. No. If we're going to take the time to tell this story, we're going to have good writing, good sound effects, good music, good gameplay, the whole deal, testing, feedback. So I think there's less of a chance of producing like something shitty off the top just for the sake of a cash grab when it comes to a video game, as opposed to like, oh, let's give this character from this movie who was popular a spin-off TV show, and it'll get half a season on Netflix and then get canceled. And you're like, oh, well, that's too bad. The character just kind of petered out, you know? So who knows?
In a way, it's also down to the fans. Like, for instance, if a game is bad, fans, YouTube, Twitter, the internet now, if a game is bad, it will get so much more worse than a film or TV show just because it's a game.
Oh, yeah. Because people are so much more invested. Because also, you know, a movie, you sit down, you watch it. If it's good, great. That's a great 2 hours. If it's bad, well, it was only 2 hours. But a game, you're lining up to invest 15, 20, 30, 100 hours depending on the game.
Yeah.
So if it's bad, the promise of the entire game is bad, and that's shitty. Now, I don't agree with people being toxic, being entitled, threatening developers or actors. That shit's awful. And people are awful.
That shouldn't happen.
It's selfish and entitled. But I also blame developers for sometimes rushing out a game that's not ready to make a buck. I don't know all the inner workings at CD Projekt Red. I was watching a video this morning about the state of Cyberpunk today because I was super excited about that game, and I'm still kind of miffed I don't get to play it. I haven't played it yet because I don't want to.
I tried to play on PC, and it's just...
Exactly, and they're showing all these bugs. I'm like, that's going to break it for me. I can't. But I'm not going to write the producers like, I hope you guys die of cancer. Right, what do I gain?
Yeah.
You know, okay, it's a video game. I can't play it. Whatever. Maybe I'll pick it up next year for $20, or if I get a PS5 or whatever, and we'll see.
But it's also not down to the singular developers. It's not like, you know, the PR team that are trying to, you know, update the Twitter. It's not just, you know, someone that does the UX design. It's
not one person, but you got to go up the chain far enough and figure out who said, I don't care, release the movie. I release the film. I need the game. I need my bonus by Christmas time because then I'm leaving board. That kind of stuff. It happens with the movies too. That kind of drives everything into the ground. You know what I mean? So, you know, it's a volatile industry and stuff. But you know, as long as things aren't rushed with wrench, you know, and that's kind of, I think, one of the upsides of where Watch Dogs is. Watch Dogs is popular, but it's not a massive hit, right? Marvel is so massive, they got to be super careful with every little thing they do, or they'll mess everything up. Watch Dogs doesn't have this pressure of like, come on, we need a sequel right away. We got to keep this cash cow going. You know, they could take their time to see where they want to point it and then do something decent, as opposed to, you know, big, really popular things tend to get cranked out while it's, you know, like Iron Man 2 came out super fast after the first Iron Man. It was like, oh, it's popular, people want it, let's get it out. And I thought they rushed it, and they could have, you know, told a better story had they taken more time, you know. So
I feel like with Watch Dogs, as you mentioned, because the series isn't as big as some other ones, with Legion, I felt like they got to explore different avenues into what game they could make. Obviously with the Players Anybody mechanic, and then with the Bloodline DLC, they went back to characters. So they had the opportunity to just figure out, you know, what worked, what didn't work, what fans enjoyed, what fans didn't enjoy. And I feel like if they were to come out with Watch Dogs 4 in maybe 4 more years, 5 more years, because of the experience they've had with 1, 2, and Legion and Bloodline, they'll be able to narrow it down a bit more and sort of make that, I don't want to say perfect, but near perfect Watch Dogs game.
Sure, but we also have to be careful with one thing, I find, which is, like, I find fans often talk about a franchise or an IP as, you know, give us what we want. And that there's a risk there.
Sorry, Shawn, I think your mic's cut out again.
Hello?
There we go. Yep.
I don't know what's happening here. So, you know, fans say, give the fans what they want. But I think there's a bit of a risk there because, and I don't want to insult anybody by saying this, but I believe, and I don't want to sound arrogant when I say this, but I believe that when you're a creator, that the fans don't really know what they want. They think they know what they want. but it's up to the creators to follow their vision, and up to the fans to decide if they like that or not, right? Because if, I think the last Star Wars movie, whether people liked it or not, the last Star Wars movie to me is an example of the director saying, I'm just going to give the fans everything they want. Everything, okay? You fight him, here's a medal for Chewie, here's the, I'll have Luke show up, and we'll do, no, not Luke show up, but we'll do this, we'll fix that, we'll change this, we'll retcon this, because that's what the fans want. And what you get is this awful mess of a movie that doesn't have really much of a direction, as opposed to one person having a vision saying, this is what I want. And the fans then approaching it and going, I love it, or I hate it, or I agree with some and I reject some of it. So, yes, Ubisoft should distill the Watchdog games and try to see what works for it, but they also need to keep taking risks and trying new things, even if they fail. Because Ubisoft especially, a criticism that's often leveled against them in any of their games, they all follow the same pattern after a while. Oh, here's an open world, go to these towers or central points, unlock them, unlock the map, unlock side quests, level up, do your skill tree, follow the story missions, the end.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing wrong with that, but it's getting a little stale. And, when's the last time you saw a video game, a big video game that came out and kind of really innovated and tried and introduced a new thing? Like, you hear genres being described as like, it's a roguelike, or it's a Souls-like, or it's, an MMORPG. Games that have been so iconic, they become genres, right? But those genres didn't exist until those games defined those genres. Yes. So I think, Ubisoft might want to keep the board open to, and don't redefine or reinvent for the sake of it. Just, again, I always come back to the same thing. Does it help you tell your story? Yeah. Because video games now, they're no longer about, you're a Pac-Man and you got to eat pills and chase ghosts. Everything is story driven. Everything. I can't think of the last game I played that didn't have a story, like a significant story. Every game I'm playing now is story driven. So that's what humans connect to. To me, video games today is like sitting around the fire 2,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, telling stories. It's just the medium is different, whether it's music, movies, art, books, literal storytelling, or video games. It's all the same, So as long as that's respected, I think everything else is kind of secondary in a sense.
Going off what you said about genre, it's like, so obviously the PlayStation games, they're now massive. The PlayStation story gate driven PlayStation games, they are slowly, I believe, becoming their own genre. Because obviously you have Spider-Man, you have The Last of Us, obviously Horizon Zero Dawn. These PlayStation exclusive games, Days Gone, for instance, all have a similar formula. Somewhat open world, a narrative-driven story, customization, all this stuff. But they all fit into this PlayStation genre of game that has been coming out now for a few years. So I feel like some companies might go for that. Then, like you said before, others just need to keep experimenting to figure out what could be the next genre.
Yeah,
we're always
I think
the same place.
Sure, but the need to tell stories, that never goes away. Like, if I think of the best games I've ever played, all of them, without exception, are story-driven. You know what I mean? Yeah,
my favorite game of all time is Mirror's Edge. But then underneath that, a story-driven...
That's a great game.
It's so fun. Is Uncharted 4. Now, I never played an Uncharted game before Uncharted 4, which probably I should have. But
I hadn't.
Yeah. But I still managed to connect to the characters, connect to the story, and then spoilers for anyone that hasn't completed the ending. But when you're on the beach and you're playing as this random girl, it's like, okay, what is this? And then you find out he had a daughter. It's those moments in games that really, they're just nice. They're just brilliant moments.
And,
like
you connect with them. Well, the opening of The Last of Us, you know what I mean? That's devastating storytelling. The opening of God of War, incredible. I was literally crying in the first 5 minutes of the video game. The end of Spider-Man, same thing, you know what I mean? The end of Ghost of Tsushima, like Ghost of Tsushima is one of the greatest story-driven games I've ever played. The Witcher 3, Mass Effect, like I could go on and on and on. These are all my favorite games. They're all like when I talk about them, I don't talk about the mechanics.
Not about gameplay.
I talk about the story, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with Watch Dogs. You don't go, oh, it's cool, you can hack a drone. You go, oh, this person's, uploading people to a computer and, you have to free them type of thing, like.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome.
It's games that allow the mechanics to help tell the story, I think, are something special.
Yeah.
For me personally, if the mechanics help drive whatever story you're telling or whatever the character's trying to do, then that is a fantastic and basically can seamlessly blend everything together, and it makes a great game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of the holy grail if you think about it, and it's nice to see more and more of that happening. I find in this day and age, there's more and more movies that I find I have a hard time investing in because the stories are always lacking, and there's more and more games that are the opposite that I'm really into.
Honestly,
their story,
I feel like
I don't mind.
A few years ago, we in the film industry, there was such a pull for indie films. So many came out. Like you had I think it was called Grade 8 that Bo Burnham made. Completely different to what he's done before. It was comedy, but it was amazing. And then obviously Call Me By Your Name. It wasn't actually, they're big names now, but back then no one knew who Timothée Chalamet was.
Now he's in Dune.
Yeah, no one knew the story. It was made for a couple million, and it told a story. It was all shot at one camera as well, which I thought was quite amazing. And I feel like that time is now coming in gaming. Like the story. Yeah,
well, year after year, I see AAA games coming out, being like, Anthem, The Avengers, right? Those come out. The Cyberpunk. People are like, man, millions and millions of dollars. But then, like, I don't know, Kenna, Bridge of Spirits, or Hollow Knight, or Among Us, whatever. Like, these tiny little independent things come out, and it shows you it's not about the money behind it.
Yeah.
It's not about the franchise. It's about the vision, the story they're trying to tell through the game and the mechanics they use to tell that. So I'm all for, my video games and movies are very similar in that you've got the big studios cranking out the blockbusters and the indies trying to survive. And the indies are super important because they kind of keep the industry from becoming stagnant. You kind of push things forward. Because often big studios will take an idea that a small studio was successful with and then repurpose it.
To make it bigger. And
PUBG came out and was like, Battle Royale, PUBG. Now PUBG's not all that much anymore. Now it's Fortnite, it's Overwatch, but that's basically PUBG. It's the same idea, just repurposed.
Reskinned, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Reskinned. Good way of putting it.
Right. So we're just going past tower mark. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Would you like to, this is your time, promote anything you're doing, promote your socials?
So y'all can find me on Twitter, obviously. I'm pretty active on Twitter, just Shawn Baichoo on Twitter. I'm on Instagram under Chubei, which is Baichoo, just swapped, so Choobi. I'm Chubei on Instagram. I have a website, which is ShawnBaichoo.com. You can go. I've got some like reels up on there, updates. I keep it updated pretty often. I've got a fan page on Facebook, just Shawn Baichoo fan page. I don't update that as often though. And like I was saying earlier, I'm on Cameo now. So Cameo is a website or an app. And you can look me up under Shawn Baichoo, and you can request for a small fee. You can request like a shout out, a birthday greeting, a hello, a character bit, whatever. So yeah, you guys can find me on all those things, and to stay most current on what I'm working on and what just came out. You can check out my website for that. I usually keep that pretty updated with video games, TV, film, anything else I'm doing, voice stuff, etc.
Awesome. So all of that will be linked in the description down below, and it would have been up on your screen now for people to just watch. Shawn, I have had such a great 2 hours.
Yeah, I know that kind of flew by. It's kind of got away from us, but that's great, man. It was more than happy to talk to you, Billy.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was nice to chat not only about games but also about acting and stuff like that. So
yeah, and I don't get to do that as often. Usually, I get
game,
and I don't blame people because not everyone watches everyone else's interviews, but I'm often telling the same stories or going over the same points. And again, I get that, but it's nice, like no one's ever asked me before what my favorite dinosaur is. So I think that was a great question, for example. And it's nice to talk about acting, but not just, what it's like to be wrench, but my approach or different people's approaches and how people view acting, what it's like to work with other people, what the experience is like. It's nice because it's a job, but to me, it's not just a job. It's kind of a way of, not a way of life. I mean, I don't say I live and breathe acting. I'm still just a person, but it is, I do find myself blessed to be able to do something that I can live off of, that I don't really consider to be work. Like, it never really happens that I get up in the morning and I go, ugh, I got mocap. Oh, I got voice today. No. I'm always like, yes, I get to do my thing once more, So very grateful for all that stuff.
That's amazing.
And it's nice to talk about it.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm so, again, glad you came on. Guys and girls, obviously, if you enjoyed it, like, greatly appreciated. Subscribe if you're new. Go follow Shawn on everything. Check out his website. And I'll hope to see you on the next video.
That'd be lovely. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And Billy, nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you too. Bye, guys.